my name is Rajesh Srivastav. I've been here for the past 20 years. We joined, in fact, a lot of us joined at the same time. Asaumen, Ashu, myself, we joined around 97 end. So it's a little more than 20 years. So Dr. Govind Raju has already talked about concentrations, different kind of concentrations. So he has given you a very good physical feeling of the system. So my job is a little harder, more mathematical. So using that physics, how do we, because our ultimate aim is to see how the solute will behave, how will it move, how will it spread and so on. So he has given you an idea of how it moves, how it spreads. Let's look at mathematical aspects of it. We want to be able to model it so that we can, as somebody asked, how do you measure dispersion coefficient? How do you measure the velocity? So as he rightly said, there is no direct way of measuring. So what we do is we generate models with these parameters, the velocity and the dispersion coefficient. Then we try to simulate, compare with the experiments and see what parameters give us the best fit of the computed values and the observed values. So our aim in this lecture would be to look at what is the governing equation, which we can solve to obtain the distribution of concentration. And then of course with every governing equation there are some boundary conditions which are needed. Depending on what kind of equation you have, how many boundary conditions, initial conditions you need, that will depend on that. So let's start with this. I am borrowing from his lecture. The mechanisms are already told by him, so I am just copying those things here. We will start from. So he has already told you about pure advection. When the solute moves with the water, then we have dispersion, which is again caused by velocity fluctuations. So the order is somehow not coming properly, but let's write these. So I'll just show everything together. So we have diffusion, pure advection, dispersion, and as we discussed, we can combine the dispersion and molecular diffusion into one and call it hydrodynamic dispersion, because both of them are concentration gradient dependent. So we can combine them in one, and then the advection will be the other term. So if we look at the total solute flux, what we would do to derive the equation is to look at the mass balance. If we take an elementary volume, how much mass is coming in, how much is going out, what is the change of mass within the control volume, that is the basic idea of deriving the advection, what we call the advection dispersion equation. Sometimes people call it convection dispersion equation also, and as Saumen said, I think defective confusion equation or somehow. There are a lot of names by which this equation is known. So I call it advection dispersion equation, ADE. Now this notation I have changed a little bit to make it a vector and tensor quantity, but don't get bogged down by this vector notation and tensor notation. We will ultimately make it very simple 1D form, where velocity and dispersion will be simple numerical numbers, 1D velocity. But actually if you have a velocity of flow, that's really a vector. It could be in any, it could have three components if you are talking about Cartesian, x, y, z components, and dispersion is tensor. So it's like dx, y, dx, x, dx, z and so on. So all these components are there. So when we write the equation, we could write it in a very general form, and then we will make it a little simpler to understand. So let's look at this elementary volume. All of you are familiar with how to derive continuity equations, apply continuity equations, derive it. So let's look at this delta x, delta y, delta z porous medium elementary volume and denote our Q solute coming in. Let's look at x direction only first. So there is some solute flux, Qs x in the x direction coming in, and then going out we can write similarly. So it's not coming out very well. Let me show you everything together. Okay, so what I wanted to show here, this QSX coming in, and then this Q plus delta Q by delta X into delta X, the standard procedure, how we write the input, inflow and the outflow. So if you look at the net inflow in the X direction, this is what is coming in, delta Y delta Z is the area of the phase through which solute is entering, and delta time is the time during which it is entering. So we are looking at how much solute mass is entering this control volume over a time period of delta t, and then how much is going out. So the going out is this term, standard procedure again, that you take partial derivative with respect to x multiplied by delta x. So that this term in the bracket gives you the rate at which solute mass is going out. And if you now put this QSX as the advection and the dispersion terms, then if you see here this Vx, so now we are saying that we have velocity in all three directions, Vx, Vy, Vz, and therefore in the Vx direction we could apply this. Now notice this theta here, and again there are two different ways of looking at it. You can call this theta Vx as Qx, which is the Gaussian, I will not call it velocity, Gaussian flux in the x direction. Shivam doesn't understand because in the previous lecture he said that don't call it Gaussian velocity, it is a flux. So this is theta Vx is the Gaussian flux. And you can look at it in two different ways. You can think of Gaussian flux over the entire cross section multiplied by delta y delta z, which is the area of the cross section. Or you can think of it in this way, that Vx is the velocity, and then theta into delta y delta z is the area through which it is flowing. So it will give you of course the same answer, but there are two different ways of looking at the same term. Either seepage velocity into the actual area, or the Darchan flux into the total bulk area, which gives you this term. So this is the advective part of the solute flux. And then, as I said earlier, that if you look at the complete dispersion tensor, then there will be three of these components. Due to a gradient in the x direction, what is the solute flux? Due to gradient in the y direction, what is the solute flux in the x direction? And similarly, due to a gradient in z direction, what is the solute flux? Again, dispersive flux in the z. So these three terms will come because of the tensor. Ultimately, of course, we will make all non-diagonal terms zero, and we say that only it has a diagonal element only. So this is what we will use for QSX here, and similarly here. And using this, we then get. Let me just put everything together. So what we get is the net inflow. If you take the inflow minus outflow, then you are left with only this one term, partial with respect to x, which gives you this. And now this is only in the x direction. We will have to add y and z direction inflows also. But whatever is the net inflow in the control volume must be equal to at what rate mass is changing within the control volume. So again, we have mass within the control volume as theta Cr. Somebody in the previous lecture asked, what if we have a solid phase also? Now if you have a solid phase, then in addition to this theta Cr, you will have S into rho, the bulk density, into the solid phase concentration S. But right now in my slides I have not included the solid phase, I am only assuming liquid phase concentration. If you have solid phase, okay, so let me ask you that. If you have solid phase, in this term, of course we will add something. What about this term? Do we need to change that term also? So, have you understood the question? This question, this derivation assumes that we have solute only in the liquid phase. If we have something sorbed on the solids, then one hint I have given you is that this term needs to be changed. Total mass of solute within the control volume has to be different, because the solid phase mass has to be added. So rho V into S will be added here. What about advection and dispersion terms? do they need to have some terms involving S? Retardation. Actually, retardation comes from this term. When you add S, but so we will have to assume something about. So the solid phase concentration. If we have flow of water, the solid phase, assuming that there is instantaneous equilibrium of solid and liquid phase. So there are assumptions which need to be made. Let's say that solid phase solute, which is on the solid phase, is not being advected because it's solved on the solid. So we don't need any term in the advection and diffusion part. The retardation comes, so if you put here the solid phase term S, you can substitute that as a retardation factor into CR, but we will not go into that, at least in this lecture, maybe in the next lecture, because I have prepared it based on only liquid phase concentration. So let's just leave it at that if you have solid phase, instead of theta CR, you will have theta CR plus rho B bulk density into S. That will be the additional mass coming from the solid phase. Okay, so now once you add all the three directions, X, Y and Z direction net inflows, equate it to the rate of change of mass within the control volume, then of course you divide it by the delta X, delta Y, delta Z and delta T, and you get this equation. So this is the kind of the long form. Yes, I thought I had missed some terms, but so we have these three terms due to advection and these three terms due to hydrodynamic dispersion. And this is the general advection dispersion equation. Since it's very difficult to look at all these big terms, we will assume only one-dimensional flow so that most of these terms will drop off. So that is our So what are we assuming? Water content, we assume it to be constant, either saturated or unsaturated, it does not matter as long as theta is constant. So we assume that theta is constant. It may be equal to the porosity if it's saturated, it may be less than the porosity, but theta is constant. Velocity is assumed constant, dispersion coefficient is also assumed constant, so we can take them out of the derivative terms. And we also assume that flow is in the x direction, although in the previous lecture I think we had taken z, but doesn't matter. We can take x direction or z direction, whatever. So here I am assuming that the flow is one-dimensional in the x direction, velocity is constant, dispersivity, dispersion coefficient is constant, and the transverse dispersion, this dy, dz, all these terms we have neglected. So only we have dx. And instead of dx, then I am writing just d. This is v, could be small v. I think in the previous one we had used small v, but assume that small v and capital V are same. So this is finally what we get from the previous equation, ignoring all other terms, assuming it to be a 1D flow in the x direction. And this is what we will use to analyze various processes. How solute moves is governed by this equation, but what happens if we change some condition? For example, what happens if V is 0? What will you expect? If I put some solute, if V is 0, there is no advection, it will be pure diffusion kind of behavior. So it will just spread like as in diffusion. Similarly, if you have D equal to 0, then it will be pure advection. So the relative magnitude of V and D is very important because that will decide what is the importance of advection compared to dispersion. And that is where it becomes interesting, that you perform experiments in the lab and looking at how the solute is coming out of your column, you can guess what is the importance of different terms. And that's what we are going to look at, what shape. So typically what is done, now generally it's a column which is vertical, but I have shown it here horizontal. It doesn't make any difference. So what we do is we take a soil column, and then we have some inflow here which initially may be clean water, and then we start adding some solute. So if you look at this curve, this is telling you how the solute concentration is varying at the inlet. So this is the inlet, and then we are collecting water here in the outlet. So as in the previous lecture we saw that you have flux averaged concentration and resident concentration. So if you put a syringe here and take water out, what you measure will be CR. If you collect some water here and then see what is the concentration, that will be CF. What we are doing is, in fact, both CR and CF satisfy the same ADE. So we are just concentrating on CR, let's say, concentrating on concentration which is CR. So this is typically what is done is that you have water coming in here, then you allow it to go through the soil, saturate it, and once you have achieved kind of a steady state velocity, constant velocity, then you introduce some solute here at some concentration. So now the C by C naught, C naught is the concentration at which we are introducing the solute at this point. And what we are doing is we are measuring here, but if we are talking about CR, we could say that okay, we are putting a syringe here and taking water out, that will measure CR. Otherwise, if you are collecting it here, you will measure CF. So right now, let's not worry about what we are measuring. Let's see how the pulse solute step. So this is kind of an step input that we are introducing the solute here and keeping it at that. Sometimes we put a pulse input where we introduce it for some time and then reduce it back to 0. So put it for some time and stop it. So let's see what happens if you put the solute like this, and if you measure the, let's say we are measuring CR here, then in case of pure advection, you will get this kind of behavior here, translated by an amount of time which is the time taken from going from here to here. It will just get translated. But if you have dispersion, then it will also get dispersed about the expected advective location. Now, the shape of this curve will tell you how important dispersion is compared to advection. If it is a very sharp front, suppose it is like this, this and this, then there is no dispersion. And if it is very much diffused like this or even more, then we know that dispersion is important. So what we will do is, in the lab, we will measure this, and based on that, we would try to estimate what is the velocity of flow and what is the dispersion coefficient. So if I look at this figure, the difference between the start time and this time, where kind of mean arrival of the plume is there, the difference between these two times, what will it represent roughly? If this time, so let's talk about what parameter would influence this time lag. If you have a very slow moving liquid, will this time be more or less? It will be more if the solid is, if the water is moving very slowly, then you would expect that it will arrive much later at the outflow end. So this, the time difference gives you an idea about the velocity. And what will give you an idea about the dispersion? The steepness, the slope of this curve will give you an idea about the dispersion. So that is the basic philosophy. So we are not measuring the velocity and the dispersion directly, but if you look at what is known as the breakthrough curve, so that is what is written here, how the solid breaks through the column is, one thing is the time lag, that gives you an idea about the velocity, and one is the steepness of this curve, which gives you an idea about the dispersion. If it's 90 degrees like this, then you don't have any dispersion, and then your velocity estimate will be exact. But if you just take this velocity estimate as difference of this time divided by length divided by this time, the velocity estimate may have some difference from your no dispersion case. So that parameter estimation we will see in one of the tutorials. What the estimate of the velocity, if we just take the center of this and divide by, if we take the length and divide by the time taken for the center of this 0.5 point, what estimate would that be? So typically it will be very close to the velocity, but because of dispersion there is some difference. So we will see that. So that is the basic idea, that you develop the equation, advection dispersion equation, you try to solve it, the solution gives you the breakthrough curve at, of course, at the outlet, but you can of course measure the time variation of concentration anywhere in between by putting some instrument here, but typically it is done in the outfield. Now let's see. So the other kind of input which you can have is a pulse input, where you introduce the solute, stop after some time, and then see again what is happening at the outlet. So this this curve may not be very good drawn by hand, but typically this kind of behavior you will see, that it increases and then of course it again goes back down. So you can solve your advection dispersion equation either with a step input or with a pulse input, or you can have some other boundary condition. So the boundary condition is also important. Whenever you have a governing equation, your solution naturally depends on what are the initial conditions. For example, initially, is there any solute in the column? Is it free from the solute? So that will also govern the shape of this curve. So let's see typically what kind of things you get. So initial condition, suppose I put, it's not really initial, but let's say that initially also we can, instead of putting in the incoming water, we put a solute only to a certain part of the column. We put it in the initial some portion. How does it move? Then we allow water to come in. It will, pure advection, it will retain its shape, move like this. Advection and dispersion, again it will spread about the mean location, but the mean location will be nearly identical. It will move almost the same distance, but spreading a little bit about that position. And this we are not talking about in this lecture, but if you have a reaction when the solute is sorbed on the solid, effectively that retards the movement of the solute. So instead of moving up to a certain particular place, it will move much slower because of this sorption and equilibrium sorption we assume. It will have the same shape. Only thing is your time effectively would be lagged by something called retardation factor. That we are not going to discuss here, but that retardation factor depends on the bulk density and the theta also, 1 plus rho b into distribution coefficient upon theta. That we are not covering here, but the important thing is that it will slow down. So if your water velocity which you are measuring is high, and then you are looking at your breakthrough curve and seeing that the solute is coming slower, then you know that there is some kind of reaction also involved. Okay, now let's look at this. So how many boundary conditions, initial conditions you need depends on what kind of equation you have. Our equation, advection dispersion equation, is first order in time. You have the first derivative, and then you have the second derivative in space. So you will need one initial condition and two boundary conditions. Now initial condition, typically you could have some Ci which may be a function of x, but as it becomes a function of x, it becomes more difficult to solve the equation. So typically what we do is we try to deal with very simple initial condition. That's in our control, what initial condition we want to put in the column. So we typically always put this Cix as 0. So initially there is no solute in the column, so Cix is 0. But there are two boundary conditions which we now need to specify. So this initial condition, we say that initially solute free, and therefore Cx0 at time t equal to 0, at all x's there is no concentration. The boundary condition, you have two boundaries, x equal to 0 and x equal to L. L is the length of the column. and V is the velocity, the seepage velocity. So you could have these conditions at x equal to 0 or x equal to L, any combination you can have, but typically if you look at physically, the condition at x equal to 0 is a little bit easier. At x equal to L, it's more difficult to apply what kind of boundary condition should you use at x equal to L, where the solute is coming out of the column. When it's entering, again there is some options of specifying the condition, but x equal to L is typically more difficult, and that's why what we do normally is assume, at least for analytical solutions. For numerical, there's no problem, you can apply some kind of condition, but for analytical, typically what we assume is that column is infinite or semi-infinite, because one direction is fixed. So we assume that column is semi-infinite and apply the boundary condition at x equal to infinity, and then look at only what is happening from 0 to n. So that is typically what is done. Now, let's look at the inlet boundary. So inlet is x equal to 0, where we are introducing the solute. There is, you may be familiar with these types of condition. Dirichlet condition means the variable is specified. Neumann is where the derivative is specified, and Cauchy or Robin or mixed, various types of names are there, where we have combination of the variable and its derivative. Some kind of combination is specified. I will call it Cauchy. So at the inlet boundary, if you have a step input, then initially there is no solute, you have 0, but at 0 plus, you are saying that C becomes equal to C naught. So C naught is the concentration which you are putting in the water, which is coming in at T equal to 0. So 0 plus means that after that it becomes C naught, before that it is 0. Or you can have a pulse input where T naught is the pulse duration. So up to that time you have C naught, and that after that time it becomes 0, and of course there is a discontinuity at T naught, where you suddenly drop from, this is not correct, this should be greater. So pulse input where you have up to T naught something, after that it becomes 0, the step where you maintain it at C naught, or you could have an impulse input which makes it mathematically very simple, so some people try to use it, is that you put certain mass at T equal to 0 and then let it go. So what you are doing is everything is at the Dirac delta function, that at T equal to 0 you are suddenly putting the concentration very high and then letting it go. But we will not really typically not deal with this step and pulse input. In fact, we would look at mostly the step input, because pulse input is it's a linear problem. So pulse input is can be obtained by superposition of one positive and one negative steps. So we will look at the step input mostly. And then there is still some discussion going on. People think about it in different ways. What should be the inlet boundary condition? So Dirichlet is one, where we say that the concentration in the column at x equal to 0 immediately becomes C naught. So it jumps from 0 to C naught immediately. Then there is another school of thought which says that this is better, where you say that there is a very thin kind of boundary layer where the concentration at one side is C naught, this is on the inflow side, and as you enter the column, the concentration does not immediately become C naught, it goes from 0 to C naught, not suddenly but over a certain distance or time you can think of. So this is the boundary condition which is used at x equal to 0, that you have the inflow coming in, the advective inflow Vc naught, and this is the advective and dispersive outflow from that small little boundary layer, and then they should be equal because the boundary layer is very thin, so there is no storage or no change in mass within that. So we could use either a Dirichlet condition at the inlet, where we say that suddenly the concentration jumps from 0 to C naught, or we could say that we will apply a Cauchy mixed condition where it will be a little bit slowly going to. So let me see if you can think of it. So if I solve a problem using Dirichlet and then using this Cauchy, of course after a long time both of them will become similar. But initially, would you expect a lower concentration, lower resident concentration using this condition or using Dirichlet? Using Cauchy. Yeah, because Dirichlet suddenly it will go from 0 to C naught. Cauchy will allow it to have a smaller concentration than C naught. So what happens is, what we are saying is that we are introducing the fluid which has a concentration of C naught. Our column still had 0 in the beginning, so there was a gradient which will cause some diffusive flux. And therefore, this term is, so if we have a D which is equal to 0, then of course it becomes same as Dirichlet condition. If there is no dispersion, then Vc naught equal to Vc at x equal to 0 tells you that C at x equal to 0 is equal to C naught. So Dirichlet condition is the same as Cauchy with a very low or 0 dispersion. Okay, now at the outlet, as I said, is more difficult to formulate. So typically what we say is that the Neumann type condition, that the gradient of the concentration with x is equal to 0. Now sometimes instead of applying it at infinity, sometimes people apply it at L also, saying that we will model the column saying that at the exit the diffusive flux is equal to 0. So del C by del x equal to 0 is another way of saying that there is only advective flux. There is no diffusive flux because d into del C by del x is equal to 0. So what we are saying is that there is only advective flux at x equal to L. If we put this instead of at infinity, if we put that at x equal to L, then what we are saying is that the boundary condition at x equal to L is saying that there is no diffusive flux, so the gradient is 0. Sometimes people say that if you apply it at infinity and then use it only from 0 to L, that's much better. Applying a 0 flux condition at x equal to L is not really very correct way of doing it, because if you look at the solid profile, it does not attain a 0 gradient at the outlet. So this is a little bit more complicated, but in our analytical solutions we will do this. We will assume that it is semi-infinite, apply this at infinity, and then use from 0 to L. So whatever we are getting at L, we assume that that is our outlet concentration. So now let's look at some of the analytical solutions. So if we have a specified concentration of C naught, again that should be small c naught, but so what we are doing is solving this advection dispersion equation, initial 0 solid free column, applying the boundary condition at infinity, saying that del C by del x at infinity is equal to 0. So this error function, complementary error function, most of you should be familiar with. So this one has these two different terms, x minus vt and x plus vt terms, and then there is this term e dx upon d, which tells you the relative importance of velocity, the advection and the dispersion. And if you look at a very large value of vx upon d, the second term becomes negligible. Actually, of course, this becomes large, but error function complementary also has this e to power minus x square term in there, which kind of balances this. So for very large values of Vx upon d, this term becomes negligible. And then there is a very simple way, as we discussed last time in the last slide, that if you measure the time it takes for the concentration to become 0.5, the half of the inflow concentration, you can estimate the velocity as the length of the column divided by the time it took for the concentration to become 0.5 at that hour. So a very simple estimation kind of can be made by this, saying that this is the velocity at which the solute is traveling. Of course, assuming that there is no reaction, no retardation involved. And similarly, if you look at the slope of the concentration curve, so as we discussed, the slope gives you an idea about the dispersion coefficient. So if you look at the slope of the breakthrough curve near C by C naught equal to 0.5, it will give you some idea about the dispersion coefficient. So this is a very elementary, simple way of, so this basically comes from your solution. If you look at the derivative, square and t, in fact, you should have written t0.5 also here, but this is applied at near the point t0.5. T0.5 is the time where C by C naught becomes 0.5 at the outlet. So as somebody was asking, how do you measure dispersion coefficient? So one way is that you measure the breakthrough, because concentration measurement is much easier. So instead of measuring dispersion coefficient, you are measuring the concentration, and using the derivative of that curve, the slope of that curve, and the time lag, you can estimate the velocity as well as the dispersion coefficient. So in the first tutorial, I think we would have this very rough estimate of L and V and D using this. So today you will be able to see. So one way is, of course, in the lab you measure the concentration. One other way which we will do in the tutorials is generate the breakthrough curve using this equation. So when you measure in the lab, of course, there are a lot of other factors which get involved. Your column may not be exactly homogeneous. Measuring instruments may have some errors. So if you apply your methodology to data collected in the lab, you may not get exact values, and then you can attribute it to the errors in the measurements or assumptions. But if you are using this analytical solution, generating the values and then applying this, then of course you should be able to get back exact values. If, of course, these are estimates, these are not exact. You will see in the if D is 0, then this V estimate will be exact, but otherwise, because of the dispersion, there is some difference between the velocity obtained from this and the actual velocity. So this is one way of estimating the velocity in the dispersion. So this is only with one kind of condition, a specified concentration at the inlet. What happens if we so instead of a semi-infinite column, since we are doing mathematically, we can do anything. So we assume that the column is infinite. So we inject the solute at x equal to 0, and then say that it goes both ways, of course, because advection one way, but dispersion in both directions. So then you will have this kind of solution, which is similar to the previous one. For very large Vx by d, it is similar. But of course, that is not very useful. Infinite problems, normally we don't find it very useful. But the other useful solution which exists is the Cauchy condition at the inlet. So there we say that if you have a reservoir, a well-mixed reservoir, which keeps the concentration at C0, and then apply the mixed condition where C will slowly go from 0 to C0, not sharply, then this is the analytical solution given for this boundary condition. So using these three boundary conditions, three different, I don't know in the lab what, Soumyan, do you remember what we are using in the lab?
C equal to C.
C equal to C0. So we will see.
We are not injecting pulse.
Anyway, so effect of boundary condition. In fact, in the tutorial I have given a problem where you will see the effect of boundary condition on C. So this is the analytical solution with Cauchy boundary condition at the inlet. And of course, what we do is V and D are the only two variables here which we are trying to estimate. So there are various ways of doing it. One way which we saw in the previous slide was using the T 0.5 and the slope del C by del T at 0.5. The other way of doing it is you solve this equation, you measure the concentration in the lab and solve this equation with some assumed value of V and some assumed value of D. And one starting guess could be whatever we have estimated from that equation, V and D. We could use that as a starting value. So we plug in different values of V and D, compute our breakthrough curve using this, and try to match it with the observations which we have in the lab. So that's kind of a brute force approach, but there are softwares available which can do that automatically for you. So you give it a starting value and it will just automatically generate, and based on some gradient search or some method, it will try to bring V and D or closer to their so-called real values, so that the difference between the observed concentration and the computed, either from analytical solution or you could use numerical. So analytical solution is useful when you have the assumptions which are satisfied. So if you have a homogeneous column, well controlled boundary conditions, your analytical solution works well. But typically you would go for numerical solution if some of your assumptions are not valid. And of course, when you go to the field, then always, almost always, you will have to go for numerical solutions, because there are so many variations, heterogeneities. It's very difficult to do an analytical solution for those conditions. Okay, this is probably the last slide. So the advection dispersion equation is in a dimensional form, where you have x for length and t for time and so on. Normally, not only in this case, but in most cases we would like to deal with non-dimensional quantities. So that simplifies our life. It reduces the number of parameters in a sense. For example, in pipe flow, instead of looking at velocity, diameter, and so many other things, we just look at the Reynolds number. That governs the flow. So here also saying that what is the parameter which specifies the relative importance of the advection and the dispersion. So we try to non-dimensionalize our so what we do is we come up with some non-dimensional numbers, and some of them are actually, better number should have been later, but relative length, for example. So instead of saying that we would write our equation in terms of x, we could say we could write our equation in terms of a relative length x compared to what is the length of the column. So x by L would be an obvious scaling for length. Similarly for concentration, C by C naught is an obvious choice. There is this probably term new for most of you, pore volume. So this is a non-dimensional time which tells you, so what does Vt by L represent? Let me ask you this question. If you look at the term Vt by L, physically, what does it represent? It's a non-dimensional number. What is it? So it represents some effect of advection, but if you have to come up with a physical description of Vt by L, what would you call it? So pore volume is the name given to it. So what is Vt? What is Vt? Vt is the distance, on an average, the distance, we could say mean distance traveled by the solute plume, divided by the length. So how many column lengths has it traveled? So if Vt by L is half, that means the time is enough for the solute to go midway to the column. If Vt by L is 1, then that time is enough for the solute to travel the entire length of the column. So it's a how many pore volumes have you traveled? That is basically what this pore volume says. So this is the Vt by L is the non-dimensional time. So you have non-dimensional length c and t, and once you use these three non-dimensional terms in your advection dispersion equation, it becomes a non-dimensional equation with this 1 upon. So remember there was a d here and there was a v here. Now because of this x, we have an L coming in here to make it non-dimensional. This t, to make it non-dimensional, we have this v upon L coming in here. So once you do all this jugglery, you are left with a non-dimensional term here, which actually is v d upon vl. So we just write it 1 upon v. T is called the Peckley number, which is vl upon t. So this tells you about the relative importance of advection and dispersion. So if, of course, if P is very large, that means your dispersive effects are negligible. If it's small, then dispersion is dominant compared to advection. So Peckley number, and not only from analytical point of view, from numerical point of view also, this Peckley number is very important because it creates a lot of problems in our numerical solution. If we have very advection dominated problems, then the solute moves as a very sharp front, and solving a sharp front numerically is always a big problem. A lot of research has gone on to that. So solving a problem where Peckley number is very large, there are special techniques needed to solve this kind of problem. So this is the dimensionless form of the advection dispersion equation, where Peckley number is the only parameter. So instead of two parameters v and d, now we have reduced it to one non-dimensional parameter vl upon t. So that simplifies your analysis a little bit. That instead of saying that what happens if I have some velocity and some dispersion coefficient, what happens if this ratio is the same. So same value of P will result in same behavior of your non-dimensional flow. And that's why now you have reduced your number of parameters. I guess that's it. So any question? In fact, I could keep it on. So if you have any questions, I can go back to that slide and we can discuss. But more of this will probably be clear in the tutorial, where you will look at the theoretical breakthrough curves for different boundary conditions. You will also look at effect of Dirichlet and Cauchy boundary. I don't remember what other problems were there, but today we'll see about it. So any questions?
Sir, we are calculating that seepage velocity by using the time when the concentration is half of the initial concentration.
Okay.
So
Calculating means we are estimating.
yeah, we are estimating.
Yeah.
So is it from the observations, or there can be a theoretical explanation also of this?
When you say it is from the observation, means empirical? Like, is it an empirical relation, or is it?
This means we have performed some experiments, we have used some observed values, and from that we have matched it from the calculated.
No. So let's first talk about, suppose you don't have any dispersion, right? And you put some solute in here. How long will it take to travel that distance? So let's start with that. Let's assume that initially there is no dispersion. You inject some solute. Theoretically, how long will it take to come out? Suppose I inject only a pulse, just 1 point. When will you see that solute at the outlet? After how much time? So forget about t 0.5. Forget about 0.5. It will take L upon. Alright, the velocity would be L upon t. So that's the seepage velocity. It's so again, think about Darcian flux. and the seepage velocity. Will it take? Should it be multiplied with Darcian flux, or should it be based on Darcian flux, or should it be based on seepage velocity? That's the first question. So why seepage velocity?
So because it is representing the
Actual velocity, right? That is the actual velocity at which the solid is moving. So if there is no dispersion, do you see that your V will be equal to L upon T0.5? Because T0.5 is nothing but that T at which it has come out.
It's a bit.
No. So let's start with that.
Yes, sir.
So is that okay?
Yes, sir.
If there is no dispersion.
Yeah.
Now when there is dispersion, it is not exactly L upon T0.5. But as a first estimate, it's very good. So in the tutorial also you will see, I think there is a difference of a few percent when you estimate it based on this compared to the actual velocity which you are feeding to generate the solution. And there was something very, I think if you look at the spatial profile, so this is a temporal profile with time how C is changing. If at any time, if you look at the distribution of the solute within the column, centroid of that well, I would say it without really knowing it, but the centroid of that will exactly be at will give you the exact velocity. T0.5 does not give you exact velocity if there is dispersion. So the time, I don't know when you were talking about moments, maybe you will.
So we'll
you
revisit
will-
all these topics as we go on.
So as we go on, you will learn about temporal moments and spatial moments. So your question will be more clear. But as far as your question that is it based on empirical like observed data and we see that observed, no, it is based on the theory.
So, but why are we taking that fraction of C by C naught at 0.5?
Because that is the mean location of the plume. See, C by C naught goes from 0 to 1.
Yes.
Your plume in case of dispersion is dispersed about the mean point. So your mean location of the plume is where the concentration is 0.5. So if you look at that breakthrough curve, you will see that, so if you see this curve, this is what we are observing at the outlet. Now if I ask you what is the time at which the plume has come out, of course it has started very early. Because of diffusion or dispersion, it has come out much earlier than what it would do if there is only advection. If there is only advection, it will all come out at this time, right? Because of dispersion, it has spread about the mean position. So that is what is the mean position of the plume, and therefore we have taken that T0.5. And I would again say that it will not give you exact velocity. It is an estimate of the velocity. Even D, the way we are computing the slope, of this at 0.5. So there will be one interesting exercise for you guys is take the analytical solution, find its partial derivative with respect to T at T0.5 and try to relate that with D. So that expression which I had written for D comes out from there, but you can derive it from the analytical expression. So I'll leave that. These hard things we leave to you. Any other? I think lunchtime is nearing, so everybody is.
One observation that you might make
Yeah.
is when we have advection dominated, the flux and the concentration are same.
Exactly. So that D, so CF and CR are
Same.
but identical, right? So if you remember, oh, that has been erased. So here there was CF and CR equation, and CF had CR and then the D into the gradient term. So if
D by V.
so if that D
D by V, sir.
if that D term becomes negligible, D by V term, then CF and CR are same. But in this entire slide, I have not really worried about CR or CF. I am assuming that it's all CR, CR, CR. But okay, have a good lunch then.
Okay, so we'll break now and have a tutorial at 3 o'clock in NCL 312. Yeah.